You know when I say something real smart, you go, Mike, you're a genius?
No.
Or I know you have your voice down, so viewers, please do bear with us, but tell me what's happening. Igor, I think you might be on mute. We're going to work on Igor's audio. In the meantime, here's what you're looking at. This is a bomb shelter. It appears, again, to be an underground parking lot. Earlier, we were speaking to another journalist who was sheltering in an underground parking lot in a hotel. It appears that many places in Kyiv are using these structures as air raid shelters alongside the city metros. Again, air raid sirens, as we're hearing pretty intense conflict right now in Kyiv. We're going to work on getting more details and to reconnect with Igor, so don't go anywhere. But joining me right now is NYU law professor Ryan Goodman. He previously served as special counsel to the Department of Defense General Counsel, and MSNBC contributor David Rode, executive news editor at TheNewYorker.com. All right, let's talk about sanctions, gentlemen. We've seen some more restrictive sanctions being put in place right now, not just taking some banks off SWIFT within Russia, but also cutting off the Russian central bank. A senior administration official tells us here at NBC News should effectively cut off Vladimir Putin's safeguarding against sanctions, which was to hoard Russian currency. So Ryan, what do you think of that?
I think it's very positive news. And in fact, in the joint statement with the European Commission, they said it would, quote unquote, paralyze the bank. And that would be Putin's backup system, essentially, to try to evade the sanctions. And I think that's very good news. I think the other thing that we need to look for are which banks and how comprehensive is the SWIFT removals. Is that enough? Do we need to go to more banks in Russia? But at the same time, it's very positive news. The joint statement also says that it would, quote unquote, effectively block Russian exports and imports. So that does sound pretty widespread.
Keir Simmons, a little bit earlier, David, was saying that Russian planes have been banned across Europe in the EU. I think there might be people asking, why not just ban all flights into and out of Russia to further isolate that country?
I think it's, the administration and its European allies are taking a step-by-step approach, but this is all very positive. I agree. It's the Europeans that see what's happening in Ukraine. Ukrainians don't want to live under the iron fist of Vladimir Putin, and other European countries see this threat. And I think this is a big step forward. I credit the Europeans for taking it. Earlier today, Germany announced it was sending anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles. The Netherlands. So you see, these images that are coming out are affecting European public opinion, and those governments are being more aggressive. And I think Putin is losing, if you will, the sort of messaging war, the information war here.
And he's been very adept at trying to control the messaging war. I mean, he's been using social media to his advantage for the past few years. Again, I want to just emphasize that we're looking at live pictures right now in Kyiv. This is a bomb shelter where people have been hiding out clearly for quite a while, because you can see there's makeshift beds, families with their pets, entire families in Kyiv hiding out because the city is under fire from Russia. It is these images, as you so rightly pointed out, David, that is showing the world what exactly is happening. It's also these images which are getting through, at least in bits and pieces, to the Russian people. Maybe not through their main news outlet. Obviously, RT is not showing this. But through social media, which is still somewhat accessible in Russia, and also through text messaging from their friends who live in Ukraine, showing them what is happening. How much... And I know Vladimir Putin is an autocrat, so public opinion doesn't entirely matter there. But it's got to matter to a point.
Yeah, the danger for Putin here is sort of the Russian urban middle class, the people living in Moscow and St. Petersburg who don't want this isolation, whose businesses will suffer from this cutoff from SWIFT. And what's amazing is how quickly and rapidly the digital age is changing the nature of warfare. And in terms of messaging, Zelenskyy is outdueling Putin here. These quick impromptu videos, that Zelensky's showing that he's in Kiev and he's fighting, or I think are very effective. These images of men and women in civilian clothes being given Kalashnikov assault rifles and going out, risking their lives to defend themselves. There's some images of social media of Russian tanks that have run out of gas. So this is all very powerful, and all these images are hurting Putin. This is not going the way he wanted.
David and Ryan, stick around with me for 1 second. I want to get back to Igor, our reporter on the ground. Igor, we've been able to reconnect. Tell me what you're hearing.
We have heard multiple reports that serious heavy airstrikes are coming to Kiev. My friends with whom I'm sheltering in this hallway in an apartment in Kiev heard an explosion. I'm not going to say where we are, but reports have come that we are in a place where we're next to one of the targets, basically. Everyone has been ordered to take shelter immediately. We're expecting heavy airstrikes any minute, and Russians are about to hit us with all they've got.
So you're hearing the air raid sirens. Have you heard any blasts?
My friends just heard a blast. I was trying to fix my mic, so. But I'm expecting to hear more blasts shortly, because, like I said, we are close to one of the potential targets.
We laugh because that's such a funny thing, fixing your microphone, but you're in the middle of a war. How are you feeling right now? And I guess, what are you preparing for?
I'm feeling determined, and I'm preparing for several things. I'm preparing to cover this war to the best of my ability. I'm preparing for Ukrainian victory, but I'm also preparing to try to find some way to escape if the worst comes to pass, which I hope it won't.
Are you prepared if you need to fight?
I am a journalist. I would prefer to just cover what's happening and report the truth. But if my life or the life of my colleagues is threatened, then I am prepared to defend it.
Are you in contact, and that's a good point, are you in contact with anybody in Russia right now? Are they surprised by maybe what you're telling them versus what they're seeing on television there?
No, I'm not in contact with anyone in Russia right now. I do have family there, but I haven't spoken to them in a while just because they're kind of distant family.
That must be hard.
It's, I don't know how they feel about this, but I'm sure that they don't support it.
Vladimir Putin says that the country is being run by neo-Nazis and that he's trying to liberate the Ukrainian people who want him there. Tell us the truth.
Well, I think everyone understands that that's the most ridiculous thing ever. I mean, the right wing here is less than 1% of the voter base. There's to say that neo-Nazis are in any way significant, and it's a stretch. To say they're running the country is just mentally ill, I guess.
Were you able to get outside at all today to take a look at your city?
I did, and sorry, my camera is. I did, and I walked around during the day, talked to some people. They're staying calm. Many people with families are trying to leave the city, and they have. There's like a big convoy of vehicles going west. Many people trying to buy food and pharmaceuticals in very orderly queues. People are curt, but they're calm and they're determined. And territorial defense now has close to 40,000 members who are willing to defend their existence.
What's the food situation?
It's hard to get bread, but the stores still have enough food for everyone to have enough to eat. Many people have left, like I said, some store workers and owners, but also consumers. So it balances out.
Do you know how long those supplies might last?
I'm not sure. I'm trusting the organizational strength of Ukraine to be able to provide food for the people.
Igor Kosov, Igor, thank you so much, and please do stay safe. We hope that you come under
Thank you
no
very
harm
much.
tonight. Okay, let's go
Thank
back
you.
to Ryan and David. So Ryan, again, it's just hard. It's hard to be in contact with people who are in the hallway of their apartment building, and they're fearing for their lives because missiles are striking their city and air raid sirens are going off. There is a lot of pressure right now on the West to act, to do something. The West doesn't want to get involved directly because they don't want to start World War III. They don't want to be in direct combat or conflict with Russia. What more can the West do? What is left to do to get Vladimir Putin to pull out?
Right. So I definitely think ratcheting up the military supplies of javelins and Stinger missiles. But there are other ways to, completely try to isolate Russia and Putin to make him become what he's becoming, which is the pariah. And that includes, the Treasury Department. They could disclose the information that they have that will expose the vast criminal enterprise that involves Putin and his oligarch cronies. And that would speak to the Russian street, the people in Russia hearing that information. It would help delegitimize him. Another thing is we've done a very good job of declassifying certain military intelligence information in the run-up to try to stop the invasion. I think we could also do a good job of disclosing some of that now to, for example, share the information with the International Criminal Court and say that very publicly. We will be sharing the names of commanders in the Russian army. That's another kind of thing we can do. And Putin needs to be kicked out of international organizations. The Council in Europe started this very well yesterday by kicking out Russia in terms of having any representation. And diplomats should be thrown out of different countries. These are some of the things that worked with apartheid South Africa. That was too long in the making. I think that the world is reacting very well, ratcheting this up now, but there are additional steps like these that we can take.
Ryan Goodman and David Rode, thank you so much for joining me. And I just want to read a little bit from some more reporting that we got from our own Josh Letterman about these sanctions that just were announced, these additional sanctions. This is from a senior Biden administration official who's briefed reporters. This person is describing the moves as applying, quote, the Iran model to Russia by kicking some banks off SWIFT, as was done when Iran was kicked off SWIFT in 2018. Which banks will be kicked off? Those already under U.S. and EU sanctions will be the first considered, but it's ultimately up to the EU brass because SWIFT is based in Belgium. The ones that are kicked off will have to use a telephone or a fax machine to send money internationally. It's going to help turn Russia into a global and economic financial pariah. U.S. allies will hunt down the yachts, jets, fancy cars, and luxury homes of sanctioned Russian companies and oligarchs, again, going after their lifestyle, which so many people have said is necessary. The problem is it's hard to figure out who owns what. Will be interesting to see how governments try and sort through it all. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for being with me for these past 3 hours. American Voices with Alicia Menendez picks up our breaking news coverage right now.
Because, this is not a complete ban like people have been pressuring President Biden to issue. I want you to hit on that, but also the timing of this, because people are so angry at not only the United States, but Germany for taking so long to come to an agreement on this. Why was this agreement, this discussion not had weeks ago?
Well, and there was also outrage about Italy trying to get a carve-out for luxury goods and Belgium getting a carve-out for diamonds because, of course, Russian oligarchs are some of their main customers. And so there was some questions about what was going to happen there. Jackie mentioned this is short of the nuclear option and was very specific to say that select banks have been chosen. Now, I'm very curious to see which banks those are and if any of them are actually banks that process international payments for oil and gas from Russia. Because if they don't, and they're not processing payments from oil and gas, which drives Russia's economy, it's their #1 economic booster. They don't have much else to boost up their economy. Europe and the West will continue by the tens of millions of dollars a day to fund this war in Ukraine. So it's a start, but unless these banks are targeted by SWIFT are processing oil and gas energy payments. We're going to continue to see this happen. I'm also curious, given the White House said this week, President Biden said it himself, wait a month and see what happens to get back to me, how long they're willing to wait for a result from the SWIFT system being cut off for select banks for results before they move to another option.
Yeah, Joey, really quickly, what do you think? How do you think Russia responds to this now?
I don't know where Russia is with this. We're looking at, are they doing a strong enough offensive to actually take the country? Is that what they're trying to do? I think Vladimir Putin is in a place right now to where accepting defeat at this moment doesn't make any sense either. They're prideful people. I think their reaction is to continue the offensive they have, and which makes me wonder how effective this is. You either go full nuclear and actually use it to cripple. This looks more like sending a message, but not really a deterrent.
Yeah, and then Sean, just wrap it up for us. I mean, is this the final blow or getting close to the final blow to push Russia into a new alliance with perhaps China and Iran?
Yeah, quickly, this is dangerous. This could create a whole new competitor to SWIFT run by the Chinese. And if that happens, you could affect the dollar as a reserve currency, cataclysmic for America. Open up American energy. That is the best strategy. Start pumping more jobs, more tax revenue, and more power for America. That's the answer. Don't go after SWIFT.
Yeah, I think what we're watching right now is just the world shifting, and we're seeing new alliances possibly forming. Just really interesting, a really important moment in the world right now. All right, thank you guys. Great discussion, an important topic. That does it for us here on The Big Show. Stick around for continuing coverage.
And order your ID4 now.
Reports.
Well, it is expected that Russia needs to have some wins. And I'm super thrilled that they didn't have any just yet. They were not able to take any major city in Ukraine. It's been 3 days. They lost 3,000 men, and they are up to nothing. So they will increase their push, and we will push back. So I'm super proud that yesterday when we were talking with you, Wolf, we were really scared. And in the morning, many people from all over the world were saying, oh, we were ready to wake up to the news that Kiev has fallen. So we not only we haven't fallen, we don't plan to fall. So we will fight back. Ukrainian army is strategically fighting the larger groups of Russians, and when the smaller ones are getting into Kiev, then the resistant groups, such as the ones that I'm a member of, then they are taking care of those smaller groups of Russian soldiers that are coming in. And so far, we are doing pretty well with that.
Kira Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Be careful over there. Stay safe. We will be in touch. Thank you so much for joining us. Kira Rudik, a really courageous Ukrainian. We're crossing the top of the hour right now.
How do they fit?
And I start.
Let's find out, and let's play Jeopardy.
Your breaking news, massive explosions rocking the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv right now. Clarissa Ward is there on the scene for us. Clarissa, tell our viewers what you're seeing.
Well, Wolf, we had been told that tonight we should anticipate a major assault on the city, and I will say it's not the first time we've been told that. So notwithstanding, of course, we are preparing ourselves. We've been asked to lower our lights to the best extent of our ability. We've also all put on our body armor, as you saw when you were just talking to my colleague Alex Marquardt there. I guess it was about 15, 20 minutes ago now, we did hear a large explosion, and you can probably see over my left-hand shoulder here, in the distance, the sky is kind of glowing red. It's like a pulsating, glowing red. We believe, although we have no idea as to exactly what was hit, that perhaps it was some kind of a fuel depot, and that the fire is still burning. That's why you're seeing that sort of pulsing, glowing red light. We've also heard a little bit of activity in the skies and some small arms fire around, but generally speaking, with the exception of this large blast, I can't say that so far this is a noisier evening than the last two that we've had, certainly than last night, where there were a fair number of explosions, a steady stream at different periods in the night. And the real question now, Wolf, is when an air assault of some sort might begin. Now, we don't know that that would happen, but we have been warned that it could happen. We were asked to dismantle our position on the roof, as I mentioned before, also to keep our lights down. And so the assumption is that at some point we may be expecting airstrikes or something of that nature. You can imagine how absolutely terrifying this is for the 2.9 million people who are living in this European capital city, who have no sense of why this war started, what this night will bring, and what kind of a city they will be waking up to, Wolf.
You're looking at these live pictures coming in from Kyiv, where you are, Clarissa, and it's very, very scary to see those flashes, those bombs going off over there. We don't know the target. We don't know the damage, but it looks horrendous, especially for those of us who have covered wars over the years. What else are they saying to you right now in terms of what they expect in the next hour or two in Kyiv, Clarissa?
Well, basically, they are telling people to stay inside. Earlier on, the sort of evacuation alert system in our hotel was activated. Loudspeakers telling everybody to go and get into the basement and into a sort of bunker position to hunker down and wait out what was assumed to be some kind of an imminent assault. That hasn't transpired in force, although we do see this huge fire burning in the distance, lighting up the night sky with that glowing red. In general, I would say, since this invasion began, we've heard the most activity around 4:30 and onwards in the morning here. It's still quite a bit earlier than that, so the night is young, as they say. We may anticipate more in terms of strikes this evening. But certainly the expectation now for a couple of nights, Wolf, has been that the Russians would make an active attempt to storm the capital, to take control. They haven't been able to do that yet, and there's been a lot of speculation that that might be in part because of the really stiff resistance they have been facing, not just from Ukrainian military forces, but also from ordinary people. We saw an extraordinary piece of video on social media earlier in the day showing a man literally trying to climb onto a Russian tank and then kneeling down in front of it. This is how determined he was to stop that tank in its tracks. And he was actually able to stop it for a few moments before it moved on. But I think that goes to speak to the incredible courage of Ukrainian people and just the level of anger and resistance and outrage that people here feel about this invasion, about this war. Nobody, Wolf, and I mean nobody I spoke to here ever believed that this was really going to happen. I spoke to a man in a bomb shelter in Kharkiv the other day who said, Russia's supposed to be our brother, but who treats a brother like this? Now that the shock has worn off, the sickening fear is sort of sinking in as people try to come to terms with this new reality and this incredible danger that they're facing with no real sense of how to escape or where to go or what to do. And so for tonight, while they watch the sky glowing and pulsing red, they turn off their lights and take to their basements and wait to see what the morning will bring.
Yeah, and those images, the live pictures we're showing from the skies, the flashes going on right now in Kyiv. This is Kyiv, a city of nearly 3 million people, and it was just targeted. And I know people are bracing for a lot more. Clarissa, stay safe over there. We certainly will get back to you. Jim Sciutto is also in Ukraine for us. He's in Lviv. But you're getting some new information, I understand, Jim, on what you're hearing about the attack by the Russians on Kyiv?
Well, Wolf, to be clear, an aerial attack on Kyiv has been part of the Russian plan from the beginning, at least the U.S. intelligence assessment of what Russian plans are since they began warning about this, really going back to November, that it would begin with an air assault from the air, missiles, rockets, the possibility as well of aerial bombardment. There's a tremendous number of Russian bombers within range and fighter bombers within range of Ukraine today, and that would be in effect softening up, right, the battlefield, in this case the battlefield, an urban center of 3 million people, for then what would be a ground assault to take it over. Because, and this is the other piece of the U.S. intelligence assessment of Russian plans, is that taking over the capital, Kyiv, is a key step for Russia in its plans to take over the country. They feel that when they have Kyiv, they in effect have the country, or at least a large portion of it, from extending from the capital east towards the Russian border. So the concern is, when you see airstrikes like this, is that this would be a precursor to something much bigger. And we do know in the days leading up to this that Russia has been staging forces close to the capital, not quite inside it yet, to carry that out. But Wolf, I'll say this as well. This is certainly not yet the shock and awe style campaign that U.S. intel assessments of Russian plans had indicated. You know, think Iraq 2003 or perhaps even 1991. We haven't seen that yet. This is one strike. Question is why, right? Are they holding off? Are they testing defenses and then they're going to follow up with more? We don't know, because one piece of this campaign so far, Wolf, is and granted it's early and it could change in a minute or an hour or a day, it is not progressing as quickly as the U.S. understanding of Russian plans were going in. There were estimates that Russia expected to be able to sweep into Kyiv and capture the city in 24 to 48 hours from the start of the offensive. That hasn't happened.
Singleton.
Must be your favorite thing.
Kathy's death and also died.
Ends up being just 7-point mark.
Red will get
a pair of jeans that fit just right.
China would be there to bank them. China would be there to prop up their energy sector.
So with this announcement, the U.S. and allies have now targeted all 10 of Russia's largest financial institutions, and that comprises about 80% of their economy's banking sector. John.
Jackie Heinrich, live at the White House. Jackie, thank you.
Thank you.
While the men are fighting, many of their families are taking shelter underground in Ukraine as air raids continue. Earlier today, we spoke with one woman who's just praying she will see her husband once again.
Came just for 10 seconds, I think. Just he kissed me. He said, "I love you." He kissed the kids. He brought them water and some things to her of Katya, because he loves her very much. He said goodbye and left. So I've seen him a couple of hours ago, and I really hope I will see him again.
Benjamin Hall is live in western Ukraine, where thousands are fleeing to try to escape the Russian invasion. Benjamin.
Yeah, hi, John. Yes, they are fleeing, and as you heard there, they're also being split up from their families. This is a story that we saw time and time again today as we drove in. We arrived in Lviv just a few hours ago. We drove across from Poland, and we passed scores of people, a sea of humanity, rather thousands of people trying to escape, trying to get to safety, and all women and children, because 18 to 60-year-old men are being told to come back. They're not being allowed to leave. They're being told to come and defend their country. And so we spoke to countless people who said they were splitting up from their families, they were going to safety, and they didn't know when they would see each other again. They say that 120,000 people have so far left this country, but the UN are concerned that number could rise to 4. It could rise to 5 million. It's something that Vladimir Putin has done in the past. He's weaponized migration. And those people who are fleeing the country, they go into Europe, they go into the rest of NATO. Those countries have a terrible burden to bear while they have to take care of them. And so what we saw today was heart-wrenching. And we saw similar stories to the one you played earlier. Here are a couple of them.
Plan for life, we were choosing like a kindergarten, a school for the baby, and now like every plan is gone.
It's possible not to meet him again, to meet your relatives, your mom, dad, your grandmas, so your relatives. Just maybe your goodbye will be the last one.
And as a sign of that desperation, along that drive in, we saw cars just abandoned by the side of the road, run out of gas, people having to walk the rest of the way to the border. In some cases, they were going to walk for days to get there. It is truly heartbreaking to see this, John, out here. And yes, right now, the bombs, the missiles, they're dropping in Kharkiv, in Kiev, as well as in Mariupol and other places, but there is a great fear that they could come here to Lviv as well. In fact, the mayor of Lviv earlier was warning that 60 Russian special forces had tried to land in 3 helicopters nearby. They were repelled. The mayor also saying for people to watch out for buildings that may be targeted in advance here. So right now, this city feels safe, but people are fleeing. They don't know where Putin will move next, and they do fear he could be coming after the whole country. And so that's the feeling right here on the ground. And the number of people who are fleeing just shows the fear that is being felt around here.
I'm struck by that video that you showed, Benjamin, how stoic the people are. You don't hear honking. You don't see cars trying to jockey for position. Everybody seems to be very patiently waiting to just try to escape.
And the vast majority of them they were helping each other. A lot of these people were traveling alone. They had babies, they had young children. They were helping each other out, but they were running out of food. And for that, they were often turning to the people who lived along that road. Neighbors were coming out, helping people. There is a sense that, as with conflicts, and I've been to quite a few of them, it brings people together. There is a sense that they are in this together and helping each other. There were a few people trying to cut the queue. There were a few fights that we saw. Tensions still are very high. But yes, this is something, as you can imagine, that has brought people together. And we continue to see that all the time. And the children in particular, you have to say, they're resilient. They've left everything. Some of them bringing 1 or 2 toys with them. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they might stay when they cross the border into Poland or these other countries. But they are going. And this is one of the effects of this brutal war. And we don't know how bad it's going to get.
Benjamin Hall in Western Ukraine. Benjamin, thank you. Former Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs, Ambassador Paula Dobryansky, joins us now to discuss international diplomatic efforts. She's a Vandenberg Coalition Advisory Board member and former ambassador to Northern Ireland. Ambassador Dobryansky also served on the presidentially appointed U.S. Advisory Commission on Public Diplomacy. What is the most important element, I guess, of the U.S. response to this invasion right now, in your view, Ambassador?
Well, good evening, John. First, it's very good news in hearing the reports about SWIFT and the movement on SWIFT. That's something that certainly the Ukrainians were pushing for, and many others. I think that that is a punitive measure that has teeth in it, and glad to see that that has moved forward. But, you know, at this time, I think it's absolutely essential and crucial, given the fight that the Ukrainians are waging here, that the military assistance matters utmost. It's of primary concern, and it's a primary desire and objective for Ukrainians to get it. And here, what they're requesting are Stinger missiles and Javelin missiles. They want to be able to bring down aircraft and also have anti-tank missiles. And towards that end, they've been pushing for Javelins and Stingers, more of them. And the good news here is that a number of countries have stepped up to the plate on this. The Dutch, as well as the Germans and the Latvians, have promised, and not only have promised, but actually have moved on shipments to get those missiles into the hands of Ukrainians so they could defend themselves. And I think it was also, if I may say, I think it was also good news today that it was announced from the U.S. Department of Defense that a $350 million package would move immediately, providing missiles, armor, other kind of equipment which the Ukrainians have been seeking. So my answer to you is it's that assistance, military assistance, right now, which is utmost important.
Something of an extraordinary move for the Germans to be allowing the exportation of Stinger missiles and other military hardware. They have prohibitions on that in their constitution based on their history, and the chancellor overruled that and said, we're going to help the Ukrainians here.
Well, you know where I think this is derived from? First, I think there are two factors here. One, there was an urgent and immediate NATO meeting that took place earlier this week. I think that all the NATO countries are very concerned about the ramifications of this invasion, and concerned about what it would mean for the continent of Europe. And I think that what we are witnessing is a collective, strong collective defense, and we are seeing the demands of the Ukrainians being met. And I'm glad that it's happening now. I only wish it had happened earlier.
The United States, as you note, has pledged $350 million in military aid. I have to say that seems like a small number. These days, when you talk about, trillion-dollar budget deficits, et cetera, $350 million seems like maybe a drop in the bucket. Is it?
I believe that that amount is on top of another tranche that was provided earlier, and I believe in terms of the official statement that came from the Department of Defense and also from the State Department, that I think the total that they were citing was, I believe, closer to $1 billion. And they were looking at the months, not just the recent assistance provided. But let me say to you, John, I think it was crucial that this aid is given. I only wish that we had moved earlier. I think that there were some very strong words stated with an attempt to deter an invasion, but I think that here Putin looks at strength and action, and it was essential to actually move, but to do that earlier from the military standpoint.
Putin also seems to have thought he could fracture NATO. He could drive a wedge between NATO nations. If anything, it seems that NATO has come together, and even countries like Finland and Sweden are joining in the effort to repel this Russian invasion.
Absolutely. In fact, Putin may indeed regret the actions that he's taken. He, I think, has miscalculated what will be the impact of these actions. It's very striking that both Finland and Sweden are looking and considering joining NATO. But also, let me add in this mix the fact that this desire and goal of Putin has been long-standing. His goal and his objective has been to undermine U.S. power and influence globally and to fragment the alliance. And I think what we are witnessing at this time is a unity of purpose. And by the way, that's why I think you're also seeing Germany stepping in here, and that solidarity of purpose to really have a strong united front militarily against this illegal, egregious invasion and action taken by Putin.
Let us hope that the Ukrainians can weather the next few days, maybe weeks. Ambassador Paula Dobriansky, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, gas is up about 7 cents a gallon from a week ago in this country, and Russia's war in Ukraine is likely to drive energy prices even higher. We'll explain and take it up with the Wall Street Journal's James Freeman ahead.
We just moved, so
it's what it is.
Joining me now, Juanita Tolliver, Democratic strategist and MSNBC political analyst, and Daniel Strauss. He is the senior political correspondent for the New Republic. Daniel, a White House official tells NBC News that confirmation preparation work beginning this weekend for Judge Jackson. She's working with a team led by former Alabama Senator Doug Jones. Your sense of the questions and the issues they're going to be focused on as they begin their prep?
One thing we do know is that this White House, at least on the surface, wants to have a bipartisan level of support for this nominee. So that means they're going to try to woo some Republicans, especially Susan Collins, over to support the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson. I am very skeptical that in the end any Republican senator will break ranks here, and that's just the state of politics. It's not how it was in past decades, where it was incredibly common that almost every member of the Senate would vote in support of a nominee for the high court. Now these are incredibly partisan votes, almost always along party lines, and I think that's what we're looking at. The Republican Party is, at this very moment, trying to find some kind of message or some kind of critique of this nominee that will be effective and rallying to their base. And that's what we're going to see in the week ahead.
Well, Juanita, to that point, Tucker Carlson said Friday that Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination to the Supreme Court indicates that Joe Biden wants to, quote, humiliate, degrade, and undermine America's ancient institutions, to which the Washington Post, Jennifer Rubin, who you were very often on this program with, responded, the perfect distillation of white supremacy. Your thoughts, Juanita?
That's exactly the tack that Republicans are going to take, because it does play to their base. They eat up any type of racist, white supremacist language. They did under Trump, and they will as they continue to watch Tucker Carlson and other messengers like him. But the reality is Republicans are going to be hard-pressed to find anything of substance on Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is literally built for this nomination. And the same energy that we saw from her when she stepped up to the podium and told her story, talked about the reality of the history of this moment and the shoulder she's standing on with her sister locks, with her authenticity, is only going to endear her further to Black and brown audiences and viewers, voters across the country. I do appreciate that the president is stepping up, because based on focus groups that I watched from Hit Strategies, that's the type of energy that they want to see from the president, the vice president, the White House, and every senator who will be voting on this confirmation, because they want Democrats to step up and fight for her, go to the mat for her, make it clear that you're doing more than tweeting about this and defending her every step of this way. And we know that the president is, of course, going to tout this historic nomination next Tuesday at his State of the Union address. And so him stepping up now is something that he should get in the rhythm of doing for the duration of this confirmation process.
You know, Daniel, I don't think it is lost on any of us how critical of a week this was for the country, also for the Biden presidency. This was the premise of his pitch to voters when he was running for president in 2020. Crisis at home, crisis abroad. What are you hearing from the White House about how they are balancing both what is happening in Ukraine and this opportunity to fill a seat on the Supreme Court here at home?
They want to make clear that they are on top of both topics right now. There have been an endless amount of calls with senior White House administration officials who specialize in national security. At the same time, they know that confirming a new Supreme Court justice is paramount. This is one of the things that Biden literally campaigned on and promised he would do. And in a year where there is rising inflation and Republicans look to be on the verge of retaking control of at least one chamber of Congress, the White House needs to make clear that they are notching up wins. It's not clear where things are going to go with Ukraine. We are going to likely see more sanctions from the White House. And the White House wants to make clear they're fighting this Russian invasion without putting boots on the ground. But similarly, they also want to highlight that they are moving swiftly to confirm a new Supreme Court justice. So it's not quite a balancing act. They just want to make clear that these are their two top priorities right now.
Juanita and Daniel, thank you both so much for being with us. Next, Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs joins me to talk about the role of Congress in deciding how the U.S. proceeds.
We actively manage client portfolios based on our forward-looking views.
It will be ready for survivors on April 1st.
XL for making my days.
Come up with.
Total T Tech Roll. 2321321.
Or when you vote. Duh!
He was not.
Have sold millions of albums worldwide, and they are coming to the Sioux Falls area. Don't miss Air Supply, live Friday, April 29th at Grand Falls Casino and Golf Resort. Tickets are on sale now online at grandfallscasinoresort.com.
It's an Elvis and George Strait tribute on one night. Don't miss a tribute to the Kings. Coming to Grand Falls Casino and Golf Resort April 30th. Tickets are on sale now online at grandfallscasinoresort.com.
If it's going to help relieve, pack an emergency kit with food, water, and basic supplies.
As U.S. consumers deal with soaring gas prices amid inflation, Republicans are calling on the Biden administration to stop restricting U.S. oil production.
shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, shutting down oil and gas leases in this country while they were incomprehensibly greenlighting the Nord Stream 2 deal for the Russians. We need to sanction the oil exports for the Russians, and in the exact same moment, President Biden should authorize the Keystone Pipeline and authorize oil and gas leases and exploration in the United States of America.
So rising gas prices remain a big concern for consumers already dealing with inflation. Oil prices hit an 8-year high this week, briefly topping $105 a barrel. John?
Christina Coleman in Los Angeles. Christina, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in Wall Street Journal columnist and Fox News contributor James Freeman. The irony in all of this, James, is that because world oil prices have rocketed skyward with this Ukrainian invasion, Vladimir Putin is making more money each and every day because oil prices have gone up so much.
Well, yes, to the extent he continues to be able to sell it, that should benefit him. Oil prices did recede a bit. The sanctions maybe not as tough so far as some might have thought. But I think you can expect a lot of volatility, and yes, this conflict certainly puts upward pressure on the price of oil and lots of other things.
The president, we just heard him say he will do everything in his power to eliminate the pain at the pump. Is he doing that in your view?
No, I think it's very clear what not only hurts Vladimir Putin, but helps the U.S. consumer and can help those countries in Europe that are worried about doing without energy supplies from Russia. And
games will take place as 8 teams in each class will punch their tickets to the state tournament. And on Friday, it will be the AA girls' turn as they host their SODAC 16s, those being played at the top seed. And the boys basketball playoffs, well, they begin Monday for Class A and B. For AA, they'll have their SODAC 16 matchups next Saturday.
Out of breath?
Yeah, a little bit.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Sports on Saturday.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Make sure you stay along with KELO Sports throughout the week for all your sports covered, and we'll see you back here next week.
We now join the following program already in progress.
The U.S. and allies opt to remove Russian banks from a critical system, SWIFT, and hundreds of millions of dollars in new military aid set to flow. But is it enough? Plus, as more than 100,000 Ukrainians flee to safety, Europe braces for a massive refugee crisis. Many civilians are ready to take the fight to the streets, inside their desperate effort to protect their homes, putting their lives on the line. Protests break out in the streets of Russia. Is public opinion turning as sanctions deepen? Also, the battle already brewing in Washington, only a day after President Biden nominates Ketanji Brown Jackson to be the first black woman on the Supreme Court. And there's good news tonight. Hoop dreams come true for a senior in high school. Everyone calls Maddie Cools.
This is NBC Nightly News with Jose Diaz-Balart.
Good evening. Russia's assault on Ukraine has been brutal for days, but tonight it could be even worse. Russian forces are said to be attempting to advance on 3 key cities. Though Ukrainian opposition has slowed their progress, they are growing nearer to cities like Kharkiv and the capital. There have been international calls to remove Russian banks from the SWIFT system, and tonight the U.S. and key allies are doing just that. Ukraine's president has also desperately called for greater military aid, and tonight he will get hundreds of millions of dollars worth from the United States and Germany. The death toll is rising. Ukrainian health officials now saying some 200 people have been killed in Russian attacks across the country. Tonight, the United Nations says nearly 150,000 people have fled, but still many, many more are taking up arms to fight, to protect their homes, to protect their country, no matter the cost. The international outcry is growing louder, and Russians are risking arrest in the streets to protest their country's invasion. We have team coverage from across the globe tonight, and we begin with Aaron McLaughlin reporting from Lviv.
Tonight, the capital is reeling, yet still in Ukrainian control. Forces bracing for more bloodshed. Today, taking stock of last night's battle while claiming they took out a Russian convoy. Early this morning, a ballistic missile struck an apartment building inside the city, killing 2 and injuring 6, according to emergency services. Gunfire at the scene, sending firefighters running for cover.
What happened when they tried to push into the city?
They couldn't do anything.
Why?
Because our self-defense killed them. More of them are now killed.
By midday, the city was eerily quiet. Curfew coming into effect at 5 p.m. Anyone on the street could be considered an enemy. Residents staying inside, preparing for street battles, building Molotov cocktails in their basements while shielding from Russian missiles. The Ministry of Internal Affairs sharing this video of an attack on a Russian fuel truck. U.S. officials are urging the Ukrainian president to evacuate. "I need ammunition, not a ride," Volodymyr Zelenskyy reportedly replied, posting this video this morning to show everyone he's still in the capital for the fight. "It's our country. We will defend all of this," he says. Outside the capital, signs the country is getting ready for battle.
We're more than 100 miles outside of Kyiv, and as you can see, the roads are pretty clear. There have been some checkpoints, armed Ukrainian military stopping cars, checking paperwork. On the highways, Ukrainians tearing down road signs so the Russians won't know where to go. Citizens filling sandbags and holding heavy weapons. In Kharkiv, an unexploded grad rocket embedded in the playground of a kindergarten. While in Kherson, this driver narrowly avoided a missile strike. Back in Kyiv, they insist they're going to win this war, even though some warn they may soon be surrounded and outgunned.
Mr. Putin needs to understand, we are not his slaves. We know what to do, and we will kill his soldiers if he don't tell them to go out from our city and from our country.
But in the nation's darkest moments, signs of new life. Images of babies born in bomb shelters and makeshift hospitals. Hope for a country fighting for its future. Kyiv tonight is bracing for a full-on invasion. Already we're hearing reports of heavy artillery fire striking a children's hospital. Jose?
Aaron McLaughlin in Lviv, thank you. Now to the other major breaking news tonight. The U.S. and allies across the globe are taking a dramatic step, barring some Russian banks from a critical international system. It's a step that could deal Moscow's economy a crushing blow. Kelly O'Donnell joins me live tonight. And Kelly, this is a major move the White House would not commit to for days. What changed?
Well, pressure to take more serious action has been building, and it took time to get European allies to agree. The SWIFT system connects 11,000 banks globally when they electronically send and receive payments. This move would cut off Russia's 10 largest banks. The U.S. and other allies also plan to freeze more than $600 billion in Russian assets abroad and seize yachts and other luxury assets. Officials say the Russian economy could immediately go into free fall.
The colors of Ukraine waving outside the White House today.
More arms for Ukraine!
As demonstrators pleaded for more U.S. help to stop Putin's war. In a just-released interview with an online liberal commentator, the president spoke of the stark choices.
Start a third world war, go to war with Russia physically.
Or financial sanctions, which have their limits.
There's no sanction that is immediate. It's not like you can sanction someone and say you no longer are going to be able to be the president of Russia.
Yeah. Today, the Biden administration announced more military aid. $350 million of anti-armor and anti-aircraft systems, small arms, munitions, and body armor. In a major change of policy, Germany, that had sent helmets but refused to supply defensive weapons, today agreed to send Ukraine missiles and anti-tank weapons.
The one thing I think that Putin thought he could do was split NATO, creating a great aperture for him to be able to walk through. Right. And that hasn't happened.
And tonight's new actions against Russia by the U.S., Canada, and the European Union will also take steps to block wealthy Russians from buying citizenship elsewhere. That's known as golden passports, and that would stop them from getting access to the banking system not under sanctions. Jose?
Kelly O'Donnell at the White House, thank you. As clashes spread, millions of Ukrainians are facing an agonizing decision to stay and fight for their country or flee the place they've called home. Tom Llamas has more from Ukraine.
In Ukraine right now, everyone is in the middle of a battle, even families fighting to escape the war.
You can actually see they're pushing the gates open, trying to get past any way they can. And you notice there's no men of fighting age here, because anybody, regardless if you're a father or whomever you are, if you're of the age to fight the war, you're staying back and you're taking the Russians head on.
In the cities under siege, brave Ukrainians aren't just the ones wearing uniforms. Volunteer fighters, civilians armed with assault rifles, patrolling central Kyiv, ready to defend their country and protect their families. This video shows a Ukrainian throwing a homemade Molotov cocktail at a Russian fuel truck. And this video, posted on Facebook but not shot by NBC News, shows a Ukrainian man kneeling before a Russian tank, an attempt to stop it in its path. Other civilians seen handing out weapons. The former president of Ukraine calling on anyone who can to join the fight.
I don't have a weapon in my hand yet, but I have it with me. And I do it with a great pleasure to protect Ukraine.
Former heavyweight champion and current Kyiv mayor Vitaly Klitschko and his brother, also a former prize fighter, Vladimir, stepping up as well.
Please, get into action now. Don't wait. Act now. Stop this war.
Enlisting in Ukraine's reserve army earlier this month. Back in the U.S., Peter Dunk, a father of 6, desperate to get his family out of Ukraine. A pastor, his church back home, working to drive families caught in the chaos away from danger. Dunk says through a translator, he'll do anything to keep his kids and everyone safe.
I'll go into that battle, I'll go into that mess and to help people.
As families flee, so many others staying to fight, showing Russia Ukraine's greatest weapon is its people.
Tom, you saw firsthand the sacrifices the Ukrainian families are having to make as they desperately try to leave Ukraine.
Jose, the desperation I saw in the eyes of those families is unlike anything I've ever seen before. In some cases, husbands are walking with their families for days, for miles, dropping them off at the border, and then going back to fight. And tonight, Russia is realizing it is at war with an entire country. Ukraine's military telling its civilians, if you have weapons, use them. Take down street signs to confuse the invaders. And if you see Russian troops in a forest, set it on fire. Jose?
Tom Llamas in Lviv, thank you. With so many fleeing Ukraine, there is fear it could spark a refugee crisis across Europe.
Have left their husbands, brothers, and fathers back in Ukraine because they are needed to fight the Russians in their country. So the women and children bringing their families here to Poland.
This woman says it took 2 days to get here from Kyiv. Her 3 children, ages 5, 4, and 2, said goodbye to their dad at the border. She says she doesn't know what she'll do or where she'll go. Babies crying, children confused. It's a strange place. There's concern on mom's face. Packed buses crossing the border, cars too, any way to get out. As the fighting intensifies, so does the desperate search for safety.
This is a sign for one of those reception centers, one of the 123 reception centers set up all across the country. And this says the first one you can see is just this way across the border.
It will be a while before Boris Israelovich can get to one of those centers. He came here from Kyiv and is moving slowly, needing help. 82 years old, he tells us about his father who died in 1941, fighting the Nazis on the Ukrainian front. Now he's fleeing the country his father died defending. In a soft but stern voice, he tells me, Vladimir Putin is a terrible man.
Resilient through all of this. Phil Lipoff joining us now from eastern Poland. And Phil, you told us about the Polish government aiding Ukrainian refugees, but you're also seeing the Polish people stepping up to help as well.
Well, Whit, there are already roughly 2 million Ukrainians living here in Poland, so it's already a welcoming country to Ukrainians. The border is open, Polish government doing what it can. We were at a border crossing about an hour and a half away from where I am in Lublin today. We met a man from Warsaw. He has an apartment and a home there. He drove 3 hours to the border crossing to offer shelter to those who might need it. So on one side of the border, we are seeing unspeakable violence and cruelty. On the other side, we are beginning to see the best the human spirit has to offer. Whit?
And they need all the help they can get. Phil, thank you. And be sure to tune into This Week tomorrow morning. George Stephanopoulos goes one-on-one with White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki to discuss the latest on Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Talk about the elephant in the room.
And about half the Russian troops, half of those 150,000 have actually entered this country. That's what the Pentagon is also saying, John. So, earlier today we saw, Chechen soldiers deploying here. So Putin certainly can turn up the volume and send more reinforcements. But certainly so far, it's very clear that the Russians are not where they wanted to be. They wanted to launch a blitzkrieg from Belarus, just 2 hours north of the capital here in Ukraine. And certainly, even though the fighting is on the doorstep, no question. We saw the images from Trey's camera in the capital, but Russia is not where they want to be, and the Ukrainians are putting up a fierce fight. In fact, the local brewery here, John, has stopped making beer and said they're making Molotov cocktails tonight. Just tells you something about the people here in Ukraine, John.
And as you say, more of those Javelin anti-tank missiles are on the way. More Stinger anti-aircraft missiles are on the way. Things could get tough for the Russians in the days ahead. Lucas Tomlinson, live from Lviv, Ukraine. Lucas, thanks. Up next, the political fallout here at home from the Russian war against Ukraine.
We may not have seen in Europe since World War II. I think one of the most important things for us to understand is when Russia's, they illegally annexed Crimea in 2014, that resulted in about 2 million who were fleeing their homes. 90% of those were women, children, and the elderly. And this is where we know that neighboring nations like Poland and Moldova and Hungary will receive a significant number of these refugees, but we know that they also don't have the infrastructure to handle it themselves. And so that's why it's critically important that the international community be there to surge operational support to the region to help with refugee processing, to meet basic needs. We've seen a first step in terms of the U.S. and the role that we can play from here by sending 5,000 American troops to Poland to assist with displaced Ukrainians, but we know that this is only going to grow. And that's where it is great that the White House has asked Congress to approve $6.4 billion. About half of that would be for humanitarian assistance. But I really want to stress that this is where the U.S. needs to lead by example. Like NATO, the refugee resettlement system was forged in the crucible of the Cold War. And so while Europe is going to bear the brunt of this refugee crisis, the U.S. must repurpose the capacity that we've rebuilt to welcome Afghans, to help provide safe haven to some of the Ukrainians most vulnerable. And I think that is our responsibility, and we need to lead by example.
Savita, this is your first time on the program, but Krish and I have sat here many times talking about refugees the world over, talking about those who have come from Afghanistan, those seeking refuge from Central America. Now we are sitting here talking about refugees fleeing their home in Ukraine. I just spoke with Congresswoman Jacobs of California. I asked her about temporary protected status being issued for Ukrainians. She contended that as important as that might be, what is even more important is lifting the cap on refugees. Your thoughts, Savita?
No, you're absolutely right, and so is the Congresswoman. I think that it's so important to sort of activate the humanitarian parole system, which was activated for Afghanistan, where you were able to bring in refugees, and these people are then allowed to work and sort of start a semblance of a normal life. So it's very important. And my organization, which works on the idea of responsibility to protect, it's about protecting populations from the 4 crimes of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and ethnic cleansing. And what we will see more and more in Ukraine is the commission of war crimes if the Russians do not adhere to the international humanitarian law, the indiscriminate shelling, the sort of targeting of civilian infrastructure. And that in itself will lead to more refugees leaving the country, crossing the border. So in that context, it is the responsibility of the international community to provide refuge to these people who are are escaping and leaving their country, not because they want to, it's because they're being forced of the bombs falling from the sky. And again, I mean, just to underline the point that it is very important that we create the right kind of refugee infrastructures to receive them, to sort of, make them feel welcome in the countries that they're landing in. But sort of the broader question also is that how can we help those who will not be able to leave, and that includes the elderly, the differently abled, the critically ill. The other sort of aspect in this entire crisis is COVID-19. The rates of vaccination in Ukraine are not that high. So how are we receiving those populations? What are we doing with them? So there are all of these different questions that are going to come in as this crisis goes on and continues on with no possibility of a ceasefire.
Savita Pandey, Chris.
Of it well, but so do
cannot be measured.
That will have an impact within the law, but it also will have an impact around how we understand Black women's leadership in this country.
Blaine Alexander, NBC News.
When we return, sifting through the flood of misinformation online about the invasion of Ukraine.
Migraine. Your leadership, the government in Kyiv, the Ukrainian leadership, about the current battle.
Well, there are reports about heavy assaults in Vasilkiv. It's a small town, a suburb of Kyiv. Also, there are sounds in Kyiv. Of course, we will have more information later on as the situation is evolving now. But again, it's not something new. This war, the full-fledged war that Russia started in Ukraine, is going on for the past 3 days. And we see that they're targeting not only military, as they lie publicly on the Russian TV, but essentially targeting many civilians objects, hospitals, orphanages, just simple apartment buildings. I mean, it's horrifying.
President Zelenskyy, your president, says Ukrainians are never going to give up. Is Ukrainian resolve only strengthening right now amid this massive Russian attack?
I have to tell you, that the spirit in Ukraine is very strong. So yes, we are very peaceful people. We never attacked anyone. We did everything possible during the past 8 years after Russia attacked us in 2014 and illegally occupied Crimea and some parts of Donetsk and Lugansk. Even though we had all the legal rights to return them, we never planned any offensives, and we only used diplomatic tools together with the United States and all of our friends and allies to restore our territorial integrity, again, peacefully. But we don't have any other home. We will defend this one. So you see that it's not only the president who is courageously staying in Kyiv with our people. It's not only government. It's not only armed forces who we adore and respect. It's not only police and everyone else, but ordinary Ukrainians who went organized through territorial defense, but just on the streets, stopping the enemy. We all are defending our home.
Ambassador, are you getting all the support you need right now from the U.S. and the other Western allies?
We are getting a lot. I'm very pleased that now, unlike in 2014, we have very strong anti-war coalition, and that U.S. is showing exemplary leadership in this process. It's now, dozens of countries that support us. We are getting a lot of the support, but of course we need more. We are defending from the enemy, which is much larger, and with much larger military. So we need additional support, of course.
Ambassador Oksana Markarova, thank you so much for joining us. We'll stay in very close touch with you, and we'll certainly continue this conversation. Appreciate it very much. Good luck to you and all the people of Ukraine. We're going to have a much closer look at Vladimir Putin's outrageous claims that his invasion of Ukraine is being launched to, in his words, denazify the country.
Before treating your chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, you're not the only one with questions about Botox. Botox prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine before they even start, with about 10 minutes of treatment once every 3 months. So ask your doctor if Botox is right for you, and if a sample is available.
Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
In a survey, 92% of current users said they wish they talked to their doctor and started Botox sooner. Plus, right now, you may pay $0 for Botox. Ask your doctor about Botox today.
Wow, we're crunching tons of polygons here.
What's going on? Where's Regina?
Hi, I'm LaDonna. I invest in Invesco QQQ, a fund that gives me access to NASDAQ 100 innovations like real-time CGI.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, don't worry, I got it.
Become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ. Before investing, carefully read and consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses, and more in the prospectus at Invesco.com.
At Drive Time, we approve 99% of people who apply, and you can see your real down payment in like 30 seconds.
And your real monthly payment?
Yep, we get it, Tim.
Did you get it, Deb?
Yes. In basically 30 seconds, you can get approved and see your real down payment.
Jolene Kent, NBC News, Los Angeles.
When we come back, the inspirational story behind this high schooler's heroic shot.
Hey,
yep.
Moving.
Ability. One that we don't take lightly.
We just got confirmation from a member of the Ukrainian parliament that, in fact, your information is correct, that is the oil depot which was hit by a Russian rocket. I have to wonder, it looks like the glow is getting brighter. Maybe that's the camera, maybe it's, well, something else. But it does seem like the fire is probably increasing in size. Is that your impression?
It does seem to be getting brighter from our vantage point. And like we talked about before, a fire this large that you can see from miles and miles away, an oil depot burning like this, it has some serious consequences for the population living around that area. We saw some local media reports indicating that officials were trying to evacuate people. But at this hour, just describing the city right now, it's quite eerie. A ghost town doesn't even really do it justice. There are no cars on the streets. There are no sounds. It's very quiet. There are no people out. There is martial law in place and a curfew underway until Monday morning. And you can see there in the distance the sky glowing from the aftermath of a Russian strike. And the next sound to pierce the air when it, and if it does happen, will likely be an air raid siren. We hear it often since this offensive started, and the population here is prepared for the Russians to continue this activity.
It reminds one of some of the horrible fires that have hit California. This fire is huge and intense, and it could be causing tremendous loss of life among the civilian population in that town, as you say, just south of Kyiv. Trey Yingst, you're doing terrific work. We thank you very much for your live reports, and we will check in with you again. I'm John Scott. Our live special coverage continues with an expanded edition of the Fox Report. That's at the top of the hour, straight ahead.
Finally tonight, there's good news about one high school senior given the chance to live out his lifelong dream.
We need to shut him down!
It was the night earlier this month New Jersey high school senior Matt Newman had been dreaming about.
I think I'm gonna nail this.
After years supporting the Rumson Fairhaven Bulldogs basketball team from the sidelines,
think about how hard we're going to work for each other.
The longtime team manager, who is autistic, was finally given his turn on the court for a day honoring the school's seniors. That's Matt, number 99. He shoots the ball. And then this happened. He sinks it, helping win the game.
And I was so happy that I made the shot, and I gave the whole team a hug when they ran over to me.
Matty, what do you love most about the guys on your team?
They cheer my name on as I enter the gym.
That celebration's so emotional for Matt's parents, Ed and Mary, who say things haven't always been easy for their son.
Matt's adopted, and he was very sick up until 4 or 5 years old. He was not responding, and so I always felt like God brought him to us for a reason.
While their love and support helped Matt rebound, they credit the Bulldogs' head coach, Chris Champeau, and the team for making Matt feel like family.
Coach Champeau just took it to a whole nother level with including him and the kids, the way they've embraced him and accepted him and allowed him to be himself.
The guys even giving him a nickname, Matty Cools.
When you see this kid, it's almost the definition of pure. Like he wants to be there. He never says anything negative.
The team's co-captains say Matt's positive attitude inspires them every day.
The love that he has for us, I've come to appreciate, and I'm seeing it carry over into my own life as well.
I've never seen Matty upset. He's just always happy to be here.
A bond of brotherhood that's bigger than the game. What have you learned from Matt?
His father thought we were going to help him in the beginning. It's been a complete reverse. I mean, unbelievable. Kid's amazing.
That's NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. Thank you for the privilege of your time. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. As we leave you tonight, images of the people of Ukraine. Our thoughts are with them. Good night.
News is happening.
Leaders.
I think it's very likely that he intends to use the genocide and denazification language to set up some kind of kangaroo court, which would serve the purpose of condemning these people to death or condemning them to prison or incarceration.
Stuart Eisenstadt of the Holocaust Memorial Museum says the Ukrainian people certainly will not buy Putin's claims of genocide and Nazism, and he doesn't believe the Russian people will buy it either. He believes many Russians will see that a fellow Slavic country that they share so many cultural and family ties with is being invaded and brutalized. Wolf?
Good point. Brian Todd reporting for us. Thank you very much. And to our viewers, thanks for watching. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. I'll be back Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern. CNN Newsroom with Pamela Brown starts right now.
Please don't trust Putin. Don't believe Putin.
An apartment building damaged by what the foreign minister says was a Russian missile strike.
You can see the invasion that Russia is conducting of Ukrainian territory. More of this heavy equipment has been moving towards the front line.
Many people are trying to cross the border on
or may have been hit by economic times. Students and staff from the University of South Dakota did the dental work, and the event also featured face painting, arts and crafts, balloons, and huge balls of cotton candy.
The many faces smiling, coming in, getting different things, it's honestly, truly God's work happening right here.
Later tonight, My Story at 10, you'll hear more from volunteers.
Thank you, Renee. Looking forward to that. That's Miller over my shoulder, seeing the sun set. It was some brilliant weather today, Adam.
Story tonight.
The battle is underway for control of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv.
In Kyiv and in key parts of the country, our army is in control.
A senior U.S. defense official says more than 250 missiles have been launched at Ukraine as of Saturday. Cameras capturing Russian armored vehicles streaming toward Ukrainian territory. The U.S. offering to evacuate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy refusing.
We are not putting down arms. We will be defending our country because our weapon is truth.
Dramatic video showing Ukrainian citizens standing in front of Russian tanks attempting to stop them from moving forward.
Stop the war!
In the U.S., support for the Ukrainian people shown across the country in Atlanta, Georgia, New York City, Washington, D.C., and beyond. The Biden administration approving $350 million in security assistance to Ukraine. Some officials fear it's still not enough. Russian President Vladimir Putin already has more than 50% of his total assembled power inside Ukraine, according to a senior U.S. defense official.
I'm deeply concerned, and I fear that unless we step up additional military aid swiftly, that they are going to be overwhelmed.
I'm Cole Higgins reporting.
And President Joe Biden is considering additional sanctions for Russia, including whether to support removing Russia from SWIFT, the high-security network that connects thousands of financial institutions around the world. That decision is contingent on signing off by the European Union. Well, let's take a look outside now. We bring in meteorologist Haskins in Austin. Pretty nice February afternoon out there. I see a lot of snow melting.
Yeah, finally after some very cold
of that daytime missile strike that hit what looked like an apartment building. First of all, is that an apartment building? And secondly, is there any indication what the Russians were trying to accomplish, or was it just firing willy-nilly and hammering that building in the middle of Kyiv?
There's no indication that they had a specific target in mind. It was an apartment building, and there were people inside at the time. There are mixed reports about how many people were injured in that strike, but it gives you a real sense of who's most affected by the Russian campaign against this city. While there have been targets outside the city that are specifically used by the Ukrainian military, once you get into an urban environment like this, it's very hard to be accurate with the types of missiles that the Russians are using. And they are using a variety of missiles in Ukraine, not only cruise missiles, but also ballistic missiles. In the eastern part of the country, they are shelling with mortars and artillery units, and then small arms fire on the ground. So we saw the scenes of destruction across the capital today. You saw some of the images earlier today on Fox of these military vehicles that have been shot up, riddled with bullets. And it's a variety of tactics being used against the Ukrainian military as these Russian soldiers look to make
Ukraine. But officials in Kyiv are urging residents to seek shelter, to stay away from windows, and to take precautions to avoid flying debris or bullets, knowing a coordinated invasion of the capital could come at any time. UN officials said more than 120,000 Ukrainians had left the country for Poland, Moldova, and other neighboring nations.
We are thankful to volunteers for providing medicine, food, and warm clothes, and Poles who are helping us a lot.
And we have seen a heavy Polish military presence here, setting up staging areas like the one that's inside, providing food and essential resources. The families that we're speaking with say that they're just thankful to be out of Ukraine, and right now they're just taking this one day at a time. Rudabeh?
Covering a violent crisis like this is not just difficult for the citizens of the place under attack. There are serious challenges and fears over safety for the men and women on the ground reporting on these developments as well. Joseph Fetterman is one of them. He's a correspondent with the Associated Press. He joins us now from Kyiv. Thank you so much for being with us. First, let's start with what you're seeing and hearing on the ground right now.
Yeah, we are under a very strict curfew. It went into effect at 5 p.m. a few hours ago. Everything is closed. We are not even allowed to leave the building where we're staying. People have been ordered to remain indoors. This curfew is going to remain in effect for about 36 hours. Now, the reason it is so strict, we've seen nightly curfews the past few nights where they've sort of recommended that people stay indoors as a safety precaution. Now, this is more of a security measure. They say that they're hunting down and searching for what they call Russian saboteurs. And basically, anybody who is seen out on the streets is a potential target of the security forces. So it's very dangerous, very tense, and everybody is indoors for the time being.
And I know it's challenging for you. You have a helmet on, a flak jacket. What are some of the challenges you've been dealing with as a reporter on the ground?
Yeah, we're now day 3, I believe. I've lost count, but we have spent the past 3 days running up and down the stairs into a shelter in the building where we're staying. The sirens can come at any time, and they have been repeated. In addition, over the past 24 hours or so, we've started to hear gunfire in the distance, including just a few minutes ago, which is why I'm now wearing the helmet. So there are challenges all around. Obviously, the bigger challenge is that Russian troops are approaching the city, and they're a few miles away from where we are, and we have to be very careful about our movements.
It's such a terrifying situation there. What are you hearing from the people who live there, who call this place home, and now they have to abandon everything or possibly die trying to defend it?
Yeah, it's very emotional. Yesterday we spoke to a few university students, for example, and it was heartbreaking to listen to them talking about an invasion of their homeland. They became very emotional. Not only are they worried about their immediate safety, where to go, and they have now fled the area and gone to families out in the countryside and so forth where they think they're safer. But not only is there the immediate issue of safety, but really the long-term future. What kind of future do you have when you have the Russian army invading your country and potentially taking it over?
That's a very good point, and I know all of you are just trying to get through the day and get through the night, and you don't even know what day it is at this point. What is it like for you and for them to be knowing that the most heavily armed military in Europe is headed your way, possibly within hours?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's an unpleasant feeling. I don't think anybody who tells you that they feel comfortable, I think, would be lying to you. Obviously, this is uncharted territory for a lot of people. It's a Russian invasion. I've covered wars in other parts of the world, mostly in the Middle East. Each region has sort of its own sets of rules, and you kind of know what to expect. This is something certainly new for me, and I think new for most people covering the place. The trick, you can see what we're wearing. We're careful about what we do, where we go. We travel together in teams and packs of people. You don't want to go places by yourself. And you just use your better judgment. And hopefully we get through this. Hopefully we get to tell the story to the outside world. And we'll see how Ukraine copes with this in the coming days.
Well, your voice is so important there. Your job that you're doing is so important, and we really appreciate it. I want to ask you also about President Zelenskyy. He has said that he's the #1 target. Are you expecting, and are Ukrainians expecting, regime change in the immediate future?
If you had asked me this 24 hours ago, I might have given you a different answer, because it seemed in the first 2 days, it seemed like the Russian army was really moving in quickly, and it felt like it was just a matter of time before everything collapsed. Suddenly, over the past 24 hours, we woke up this morning, we were alerted to potential street battles between Russian forces, and I thought, the government may be collapsing very soon. Somehow, over the course of the day, things seem to have changed. Zelenskyy has given a number of messages, standing in front of his office, right in the heart of Kiev, vowing to stand strong. He's not stepping down, and it appears, all signs are, that the Ukrainian military is putting up quite the fight. The Russian military still is a ways off. They're on the outskirts of the city, but they have not made their way in. Downtown, the central area where we're staying, was surprisingly quiet for most of the day. Although we hear things off in the distance, there are no signs of the Russians approaching quite yet. So it seems that Ukraine is putting up a fight, and I would not write off Zelenskyy at this point.
All right, Joseph Fetterman, thank you so much. Stay safe. We're thinking of you and everyone in Ukraine tonight. And in our nation's capital, hope waning for a diplomatic resolution, but a new aid package supporting the Ukrainian military, signaling a clear stance from U.S. officials on the ongoing invasion. NewsNation correspondent Evan Lambert is live at the White House tonight with more on the support package and a breaking development on new financial sanctions on Russia. Evan.
Rudabeh, the White House saying tonight that the U.S. and European allies are cutting off some Russian banks from the global SWIFT financial system. This is a major development. Those allies saying that they, quote, stand with the Ukrainian people in this dark hour. As Russian missiles, tanks, and troops continue their assault on Ukraine and its cities today, signs of any remaining diplomatic path are fading. Friday, Ukraine said it wants peace and is ready for talks. But after what Russia described as a pause in the onslaught, the attacks continued, according to Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S.
We didn't see any pauses, and all Ukraine has been under full-fledged war.
Over the weekend, help pouring in from allies. The United States announcing this morning $350 million more in support of Ukraine's defense, bringing the total in the last year to more than $1 billion. In a statement, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the package would, quote, help Ukraine address the armored, airborne, and other threats it is now facing. It is another clear signal that the United States stands with the people of Ukraine as they defend their sovereign, courageous, and proud nation. The Czech Republic also announcing it's sending more than $8 million in weapons, and the Netherlands will supply Ukraine with 200 anti-aircraft Stinger missiles. Help Ukraine's ambassador says her country is grateful for.
This all is very much appreciated. This is what our armed forces need at the moment.
While the U.S. and many of Europe's major powers hurl more sanctions at Russia, including targeting President Vladimir Putin personally, the UN's Security Council ran into Russia's veto in drafting a condemnation of Russia's unprovoked actions.
You can veto this resolution, but you cannot veto our voices. You cannot veto the truth. You cannot veto our principles. You cannot veto the Ukrainian people. You cannot veto the UN Charter. And you will not veto accountability.
And a senior administration official briefing reporters tonight on those new sanctions, saying, quote, we will take their yachts, their luxury apartments, their money, their ability to send their kids to college abroad. The U.S. and those allies saying the new sanctions will go into effect in the coming days, and they are prepared to go even further. Rudabeh.
Evan, thank you. And those breaking developments tonight. While thousands have fled Ukraine for neighboring countries willing to take them, thousands more are still in Kyiv and other countries trying to stay out of harm's way. And for a better understanding of the situation in Ukraine right now, we're joined by Maria Shovalova. She's a literary scholar at a university there. And Maria, thank you so much for joining us. I know you can't say probably exactly where you are. It's a very scary situation right now. I know you had hoped to stay in your country. Is that still your decision, or have you decided to leave?
No, thank you for speaking about Ukraine. I'm definitely staying here. Even if I'm not fighting, I'm not having a gun, I managed to find a safe place and keep working. Half of the day I'm working in a basement, despite the fact I'm just a literary scholar, but I try to help find legal defense for Ukrainians who now arrested in Moscow. Also, I am help to fighting with propaganda and coordinate help, because a lot of people still moving from Kiev to borders, and I am supporting these people, also finding for them safe place. Also, I'm getting a lot of messages how to donate, how to find. I answer all call of help I can do, even despite that right now I'm having coronavirus as well. So, but I don't feel that I'm tired. Also, I do not feel hunger, and I do not think that I'm doing something really outstanding, because right now my army are doing much more. So you can see that our spirit is high. We are extremely united, and we will keep doing that as long as we need.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to digest. So you said that you have COVID right now?
Yeah.
So you're doing all of this. This is just unbelievable. And I know this decision to stay or leave is an agonizing decision either way. I mean, what goes through your heart? What goes through your mind?
I'm just freezed. So definitely I'm having a lot of adrenaline. So everything is intensive. And I can't see, we are doing here like hour by hour. I think today I had a panic attack, but my husband calmed me down, because our army really inspired us to stay calm and to be stronger for them, because actually people who are in Kyiv right now, and right now my students, people who are younger than me, they are right now fighting for my city. And actually that building that was hit by a missile, you're showing that on news, that is near my home, that's near my flat. So I just doing my job. So we are really inspired and motivated because all ordinary people that are here are doing best they can. Also, we saw how ordinary people, civilians, walk out their homes to stop tanks. They didn't have it. Okay, it was one Russian tank. Civilians didn't have weapon, but tank go away. And it's important to keep working because this morning we was terrified. We had a lot of misinformation and attacks, and it's very sad to see all that war crimes that Russia is doing right now because they are bombing kindergartens. And in Kiev, they bombed children's hospital. Can you imagine that was a children's hospital where we're going when I was a child, and they bombed it and kids were died there. So we have to stay strong because of that.
I just can't even imagine what you're going through and everyone there is going through right now. Your president has asked people to take up arms to fight. I know that comes in many forms. You're saying that you're assisting in the fight in a different way. You're not picking up weapons, but you're helping people get out. You're helping people get to shelter.
Exactly. Also, I'm translating a lot, translating videos, subtitling videos, and help with security. Also, right now, it's terrifying because Ukrainians are asked to turn off geolocations of their smartphones because we have information that we might be bombed because we might be tracked by our phones, but still we're definitely doing that. And we quite used this today. We learn how to stay strong when we are hearing a lot of bad news, and actually we have to show other side because this morning we woke up with the message that Kiev will fall. That also was misinformation to demoralize us. So today we definitely know how to stay strong when the enemy try to demoralize you. Also, a lot of people in Russia right now do not know how many Russian soldiers are dying right here. So it's also terrible because mothers in Russia losing their sons and they even do not know it. So this night was made a website where all Russian people can find people who are dying here, because there is pictures of documents of Russian soldiers, videos with Russian soldiers. They are speaking to their mothers, that they didn't want to come here, that Russian officers took their phones. They said that it will be safe and easy right here. So also it's very important to help to understand to a lot of Russian people that they also have to speak, and they also have to say that their sons have to go home.
And we've seen really fast, Maria, we've seen images of huge protests in Russia, Russians who don't want the war. We've seen images of soldiers from Russia who are refusing to fight. What goes through your mind when you see that and you know that there are some Russian people who are with you?
We definitely know that they have to resist much more, and we need a lot of legal defense in Moscow and in St. Petersburg right now. And all diaspora is really united to do that, but they have to work much harder because if they won't, Russia is also losing his future right now. So Russian people have to work much more. And also we are so grateful for anonymous societies that are helping to break the wall so people in Russia will know what is going on right now in Ukraine. This morning, Russian officials forbid using such words like war in Ukraine, but in the noon, official TV channels was translating what is actually going on in Ukraine. So hackers are helping us a lot.
Well, Maria, thank you so much for making the time for us. Stay safe. We're all worried about you. We're paying attention to what is going on in Ukraine, and we appreciate you and your voice tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
And tonight, we are keeping our eyes on Ukraine, of course, as the country deals with a full-scale Russian invasion. NATO troops are activated as a defense measure in response to the deadly attacks. News Nation's Michael Schur walks us through the alliance's role in this conflict.
to land more forces. Now, there are unconfirmed reports that the Ukrainian forces have shot down 2 Russian transport planes full of Russian paratroopers. If true, that would be a devastating blow to the Russian military. John, we heard about it earlier, but Western intelligence thinks that the Russians have underestimated the will of the Ukrainians to fight and perhaps overestimated their own capabilities. You know, a lot was said about this missile barrage. Some 200 missiles have been fired in this country, many Iskander short-range ballistic missiles, others cruise missiles. And it should be noted, John, speaking of that missile that hit the apartment building, the Russians don't use the same GPS system, the same U.S. military constellation space that we do. That blue dot on your iPhone is courtesy of the U.S. military. The Russians don't use that. So when you see some of these errant strikes, it does make you wonder. Just like some people have knocked the Russian vaccine, you know, some people think that, you know, while Russia certainly made gains over, you know, the last few years, and certainly look how they've improved since their invasion of Georgia in 2008. They used about half the number of troops they've used for this invasion. And back then they had communication problems, a lot of friendly fire instances. However, certainly a different ball game. You know, in the lead-in to this invasion, we kept seeing T-72 tanks, T-80s, all these armored personnel carriers, these new flamethrower vehicles, and certainly the Russians were, you know, putting that out, and the Russian propaganda machine was going, you know, high speed. However, we've seen a lot of resistance. We've seen the people rise up, certainly in the weapons. We've also seen the humanitarian catastrophe, people saying goodbye to young children, in some cases young fathers having to give up their children because they can't leave the country. Part of the decree by President Zelenskyy was that all military-age males 18 to 60 cannot leave the country. So there's a few stories of, you know, men entrusting their children, their young children, to strangers to carry them across the border. So certainly lives are being upended, lives that will never be the same, not only just with the death toll and the destruction, but just this humanitarian crisis. And here in western Ukraine, about 6 hours west from the capital, we're seeing, you know, thousands pour through not just this city, but in the surrounding areas, trying to get to really the safe zone, which is Poland, which is where about 5,000 U.S. troops have showed up. It's obviously a NATO ally, and it's just devastating, John.
You are, among other things, besides being an excellent reporter, you are a U.S. Navy veteran. We know that 1,000 or so Stinger missiles, perhaps more than that, are on their way to join the battle on the Ukrainian side, brought through Poland from the Dutch and even from the Germans. What is that going to do? Just give us your assessment of what that will do for the Ukrainians to have those Stingers available.
John, it's a potential game changer. We've already seen evidence of those Stingers are already having a devastating impact. You know, a number had arrived from the Baltic nations. They were quick to supply those U.S.-made portable shoulder anti-aircraft missiles. You know, the modern Stinger, even though it's been around for decades now, you know, goes over Mach 2, John. So if you're a Russian helicopter gunship, like a Mi-24 Hind gunship, you know, cruising along, you know, fully fueled and heavily weighted with, you know, soldiers and weaponry, you know, they're not going Mach 2. So that missile could have a potential devastating effect. You've got, you know, ground troops hiding in the forest. And certainly you saw that in Afghanistan in the 80s. Think about the U.S. supplied Stingers, what they did to Soviet forces in Afghanistan, helped turn the tide. Some people think helped end the Soviet Union back in the early 90s. So the Stingers are going to have a potentially deadly effect. We've seen it already on the battlefield. I believe Trey mentioned this, but, you know, there was an airfield outside the capital that the Russians tried to assault with airborne forces. 6 to 7 helicopters were reportedly shot down, John. Dozens of Russian soldiers killed. A number were taken captive. In fact, the Ukrainian military is saying they've captured 200 Russian soldiers. Many of these kids are conscripts, John. They can barely shave. They have iPhones in their pockets. They have TikTok. There's even some reports that they're going on Tinder, and you know, Western intelligence are on there trying to, you know, get secrets out of these kids. You know, when you talk about, you know, Ukrainians and Russians, you know, Vladimir Putin has always seen Ukraine and Russia as one people. Well, if that's the case, think how hard it is for a Russian soldier probably to open fire on someone he considers, you know, his relative. Think of, you know, Nikita Khrushchev, the former Soviet leader. He was Ukrainian. Mikhail Gorbachev had a Ukrainian parent. So the ties from these two countries run deep. However, we have some sound on this. The people in Ukraine, you mentioned 2014 and Yanukovych being thrown out of the country, that Russian-backed president. People in Ukraine want to be free. They want to be aligned with the West. They want to join NATO. They want to be part of the European Union. They do not want to be a part of Russia. And take a listen to this independent journalist, John. Or not.
It appears.
I think Putin really doesn't understand Ukraine. He has his idea of Ukraine, which is flawed from the historical point of view, but he also doesn't understand the contemporary Ukraine, and especially the extent to which Ukraine has changed since 2014, when Russian aggression began.
So while Putin thinks these are one people, clearly the people here on the ground in Ukraine, remember this is a country the size of Texas with a population greater than California, 150 Russian troops are going to have a hard time occupying a country with 44 million, John. We've heard too many stories of resistance. We're seeing it now with these Molotov cocktails and citizens rising up, John.
Lucas Tomlinson, live in Lviv, in the western part of Ukraine. Thanks, Lucas. Well, the U.S. and European Commission agree to sanction Russia for its war on Ukraine by expelling some of its banks from the SWIFT global financial messaging system and restricting Russia's central bank. White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich live on the North Lawn with more on that. Jackie.
Good evening to you, John. With this announcement, the U.S. and its allies have now targeted all 10 of Russia's largest financial institutions, and that comprises about 80% of the country's banking sector. It also...
With 30 grams of protein. Those who tried me felt more game. Now behold, new fried chicken tender.
Get it right at NHT.
Anyone taking opioids.
Luckily, your Northland Ford dealers.
I realized, you know what, I can focus again on myself.
From SWIFT, but the statement does end with a warning that the allies are prepared to take even further measures than what was announced today. And it is, by the way, the answer that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy had been pleading for as recently as just this morning.
We have this important victory. There is a fair decision to cut Russia off the international payment system. It means billions and billions of losses for Russia. It's a concrete price for its treacherous invasion of Ukraine.
In addition to blocking these banks from SWIFT, the U.S., EU, and other NATO countries are launching a transatlantic task force to hunt down, freeze, and seize physical assets of these sanctioned Russian companies and oligarchs, going after their jets, their yachts, their cars, their luxury homes. A senior administration official says we have already seen the impacts of this transatlantic partnership as recently as yesterday, when the French government seized a cargo ship owned by a sanctioned Russian bank. Now, finally, they also announced a new effort to limit the sale of citizenship, so-called golden passports that allow Russians to become citizens in other countries and use their financial systems, circumventing the sanctions. Now the U.S. is closely watching how countries aligned with Russia respond.
It also will give us an indication of how much China is prepared to support Russia in this endeavor. We have heard, of course, that China would be there to up their energy sector.
So the White House says
into the venue, the former president called Ukraine's president brave. NBC's Vaughn Hilliard is in Orlando covering all of it. Vaughn, what are you hearing from Trump right now?
Well, we just finished up a chant in the room of 4 more years. This is a former president, Alicia, who still very much controls this room, controls CPAC. I was talking to the chair of CPAC, Matt Schlapp, earlier. He said that if the former president were to get back into this race, that he would see a room like this standing solidly behind him. And based off of the reception, what you have is the former president reveling here in what is very much still of a crowd where he is even previewing a potential 2024 run himself right now.
Vaughn, you tried to get answers today from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene at CPAC, where she condemned Russia, but after appearing at a pro-Putin rally last night. Tell me more.
Right, there's so many layers to CPAC here and to the Republican Party as we speak right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene is just one of those. Last night, Alicia, she was at a white nationalist conference just a little down the road from here, where she appeared with more than 1,000 individuals. The leader of this group is a particular white nationalist who, in the couple minutes before she took the stage, suggested that Russia's efforts were good, praised Vladimir Putin. The crowd chanted Putin, Putin, also suggested that young white men were essentially the answer to America's problems. And Marjorie Taylor Greene made the decision to attend that event. Donald Trump here, just in the last 5 minutes, just gave Marjorie Taylor Greene a shout out. We tried to track her down in the halls here of CPAC today. She avoided answering any questions, but suggested that those individuals who were at that event last night were patriots, though suggesting that she didn't necessarily align with some of the more controversial, in her words, statements that were made on that stage.
Yeah, Vaughn, as you were laying that all out for us, we were playing the video of you attempting to ask her questions. You also asked former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo about his comments about Putin. What did he tell you?
Yeah, I had the chance to catch up or attempt to catch up with the former Secretary of State who just earlier this week had suggested that Vladimir Putin was savvy and that he said that he had enormous respect for him. I attempted to ask Secretary Pompeo about those remarks as the invasion into Ukraine was underway. Take a listen.
Russian state media has played your own words from this week, in which you called Russian President Vladimir Putin shrewd, capable. You said you have enormous respect. Do you regret your words?
I've been fighting communism since I was a teenager. I'm going to keep fighting communism.
Do you regret your words about Putin this week, though?
I have worked my entire life to make sure that the United States was free of communist dictatorships. I understand my enemy. I'll always call my enemy for what he is.
Americans, Alicia, are not blind to what they have watched Russia undertake in Ukraine here. And that is where you just heard President Trump in just the last few minutes suggest that the weakness, in his words, of the Biden administration is what led to the invasion of Ukraine. But you got to go back to a couple days ago when this former president, Trump, referred to the initial military incursion into Ukraine as, quote, peacekeepers, and also used the word savvy to explain Vladimir Putin. Of course, this is the same individual who had a very warm relationship with the Russian dictator over the course of his presidency. But now, with that invasion underway, you're hearing a very different tact here, at least in these first few minutes of his speech here at CPAC right now.
Vaughn Hilliard, always appreciate you asking the hard questions and holding people accountable. Thank you for your time. Next, Congresswoman Liz Cheney calling to squash what she calls the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party. The video that led her to say that is ahead. And later, NATO and why the alliance matters, including the power it could unleash on Russia if forced to.
Eliminating grays is as easy as
U.S. with an attack of its own, like a cyber attack. I think a lot of people are wondering in the U.S., what does this mean for us? How should we prepare? How concerned should we be?
I don't think that the Russians will dare to do a large cyber attack on the United States because they know that we've got the capability to do it back to them, probably bigger. So there is a deterrent effect on cyber. There's a deterrent effect on information. There's a deterrent effect on a lot of these challenges that will keep the Russians in their place.
I'm going to go back really quick to the president of Ukraine, Zelenskyy, and he has just stayed there. The U.S. had offered to rescue him, bring him out of the country. He will not. He is like a captain who refuses to abandon his ship, using social media to get the word out to his people. What do you make of him?
And Pam, this same fellow that I mentioned who put his family and then came back to Kyiv and is now unable to get to his house, he said he is so proud to serve under that commander.
Wow.
He is so proud. He said all his comrades, same thing, that they are looking to this man as their leader. And this is a young politician. I mean, he's 43.
Former comedian.
Former comedian. But he has stepped up, and he is a hero and is a leader for the Ukrainian people. People around the world now know who Vladimir Zelenskyy is, and they are very proud. You're right about him not leaving the country, not leaving the city.
He's not leaving. He is not jumping ship.
He is showing, and he is getting the loyalty and the respect of the Ukrainian people.
At a time when his life is seriously in danger. I mean, I think you can't sort of say that enough, how much his life is in danger.
He said he's the first target.
He is the first target. We've been getting viewer questions. I want to ask you this question from one viewer who said, why wasn't Ukraine better prepared for this onslaught, given the U.S. was warning them for some months this would happen? What do you say?
So there were two messages that had to get out to people. One was the urgency, This is a big problem. You got 120, 130,000 troops on your border. You need to get prepared. That was coming from the United States. The other message, though, was also necessary, and it came from President Zelenskyy, which was, we have to stay calm. We have to stay calm. If we're going to defend ourselves, we can't panic. We have to be resolved. So he emphasized the resolution, emphasized the not panic, emphasized the prepare, but prepare in a focused way. That was the message that he was trying to get. And you see on the streets now, there is a determination that's probably based on that calm that President Zelenskyy showed in the buildup.
Ambassador William Taylor, thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
And we are following the breaking news as the White House and its allies expel several Russian banks from a vital global banking network. I'm going to talk about that with former Treasury spokeswoman Hagar Chemali up next.
Like this Vcr mattress, get a king for the price of a queen or a queen for the price.
But the real problem
in the ring.
Did you just move here? Yeah. Cool.
Entyvio has helped many patients achieve long-term relief and remission.